Hello and welcome to Pest in Class, expert voices in pest management. Today we talk with Michael Moorhouse, the president of Mosquito Shield. We discuss his journey into the pest world, how to take inventory on what is working and what is not, and the mile markers any business should have before they go into franchising, and so much more. I'm your host, Amanda Salvatore. Let's get into it. Michael Moorhouse, you are the president of Mosquito Shield. You've been in the business for over 20 years, and you have now 120 owners in over 400 territories. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. We're happy to have you.
Oh my gosh, I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you. First and foremost, we like to start our podcast with a little icebreaker. I get to know you. It's not too bad. I promise. I was kind this round. Would you rather speak 10 languages or play 10 instruments?
Oh, definitely 10 instruments.
Yeah, I'm there too.
Music is like one of my favorite things in the world, and I'm really not musically gifted at all.
It would be nice to be able to play one instrument, let alone 10.
One, or carry a tune or have any sort of rhythm. I have none, and love music like beyond belief.
Amazing. What's your genre?
Definitely like rock and roll. I like some country, a little bit of country, like kind of bleeding into rock and roll, but or the other way around. But yeah.
Nice. Who are you listening to right now? I know I'm diving in deep right now, but I'm interested. I'm a music person myself, so maybe that's
Yeah, so I just took my 14-year-old on Tuesday night to see Jason Isbell. So he is a pretty critically acclaimed musician, singer-songwriter, phenomenal guitar player, has a great band called the 400 Unit. He was with Drive-By Truckers for a long time, and just opened for Zach Bryan last night. So he's got some country influence as well. But yeah, amazing artist. And so 14-year-old daughter,
Yeah.
she'd been to 3 concerts in her life, 2 Taylor Swifts and Bruce Springsteen. So 3 pretty epic events for a 14-year-old. But she is a Jason Isbell fan because of me, but she loves a lot of his stuff, doesn't know it all, but loves a lot of it. And after the show, I've got to tell you this, after the show last night or the other night, we had like an hour ride, and she was just telling me in her unbelievable way to articulate her thoughts. She said, you would think seeing Taylor Swift would be the greatest thing ever, especially being a Swiftie. And she said it was. And then through you, seeing Bruce was like as equally unbelievable. And she said, I watched them, but I felt this is how she related to being in a smaller venue with, like, she said it altered my heartbeat, is what she said.
Oh my gosh, that is, oh man, I need one of those experiences soon. Isn't
that amazing? I was blown away that she could take being a diehard Swiftie and take this show with maybe, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 people in this really intimate venue and captured the experience that she had that way.
Well, I wish this was a music podcast so we could dive in deeper to this. I know we have to move on, but
yes,
that sounds incredible. I'm so glad she had that experience. I wish we could talk more about music, but here we are. I would love to know how you found yourself with Mosquito Shield.
Sure. Happy to jump into that. Over 16 years now. Pretty passionate about this brand. Blessed to have had the opportunity to become part of it. And it started back in 2008. The founder of Mosquito Shield was actually a franchisee in the lawn care business, and he had hired me as a consultant for the lawn care business. So the economy was crashing, and they were trying to figure out, can we sell lawn care and keep this business going? And I had a long background in sales and building high performance teams. So I kind of came in as a consultant, looked at their model and figured out a way to make that happen. So that went really well. We survived the 08, 09 dip in the economy for lawn care. But the interesting thing we saw during that period was he had long-standing customers that had been with him forever that had both services. They had lawn care and they had mosquito control of ours. And during the economic crash, they were canceling their lawn care, but keeping their mosquito. So we learned it was very much a recession resistant business. So I started shifting my focus more on the mosquito side of things. And then around 2011, he asked about my interest in building a franchise and taking it nationally. So I said, absolutely, let's do it. So we spent about 18 months preparing and getting ready to become a franchise entity. And I launched it in April of 2013. Did our first, franchise business expo in Chantilly, Virginia. Never forget it. Really didn't know what we were doing, and just set up a booth and sold two from that very first show we ever did with zero franchisees, which was, I learned quickly at that booth to not say you had zero. When people came and said, "Oh, this is cool. How many owners or how many locations do you have?" And zero didn't go over well. So I said several under development. I kind of had to react quickly to that. But those two owners are still in the system, which is amazing. All these years later, and that was the start of it. So I just started going around the country and figuring out how to market the opportunity, and it was so new back then. So there was a lot of, much like a homeowner, like being skeptical about the service actually working. There was skepticism about the magnitude and the size and the need of it. And we believed strongly in it. It's since is validated many times that this is a really lucrative, great business opportunity to be a part of, whether it's us or anyone else in the industry. It's just a great industry to be in. And that's sort of the brings us to today.
I'd love to do a little time travel to 2011 with you when you were brought the opportunity to start franchising or bringing that on. What was that process like? And what was that time in your life? How did that feel? Did it feel chaotic? Did you feel like it was a task that you could handle? What was that time in your life like?
Yeah, so 13 years ago, there were far fewer resources than there are now. If somebody has a cool little business and they want to franchise it, there's tons of companies now that support you and tell you and walk you through how to build a franchise. There were fewer back then. We partnered with what was the largest at the time, a really great consulting firm, iFranchise Group out of Chicago, and hired them to help us do it. What I didn't realize was that I had a background in franchising and didn't know it on the franchisee side of things. So I ran new car dealerships for years and had to follow brand standards. And, when you're placing an ad in the paper, do's and don'ts and, all these things, leveraging shared services, all the things that come with a franchise. I had a great little run early in my career of being a business partner in a really cool, small kind of boutique ice cream and food business. And we added multiple locations. So we were, franchisors not knowing it. And so I had more background than I realized, but it was, the founder was a franchisee in lawn care. So first thing I did is I sat with him and said, just let's write down everything you like about being in a franchise and everything you hate about being in a franchise. And we put that list together and we really tried to build Mosquito Shield around as many of the likes, leaving out as many of the dislikes. Obviously, there were things that just even from a legal standpoint, the legal teams were like, oh no, you can't, you got to have that in there. You can't, so there's that kind of stuff. But we really built what had been deemed by many, even to this day, as a really franchisee friendly model in a 200-page document that you're about to sign that seems completely one-sided. It was a very friendly franchisee facing document.
Tell me about this pro and con list. What were some of the pros and what were some of the cons?
Sure. It was mostly cons. There was a lot of things he disliked about being in a franchise. One of them was, and it was part of the industry, well, he hated what he felt was the feeling of being feed to death. I got to pay a 1% fee for this and a 2% and a 3% and an 8% royalty, like all the different fees. And so we really try to be very transparent with clear explanations, and we would give ranges on what fees would be, what they could potentially be, but what they are right now. So we really tried to be transparent on fees and have as few of them as possible. We also had very clear language in our franchise document that said, like on brand fund, for example, a marketing fee that all franchise systems have. It's very clear in our document that it could only ever be used for helping you grow your business. Like we couldn't use it for franchise development, for example. Like it was spelled out in there. So we tried to make fees very transparent and as few of them as possible. The other thing in lawn care is he'd go and fertilize a customer's property, and they'd hang an invoice on the door, and they'd go to the next one and the next one and the next one. And that, to this day, that's still done in many of these home service industries, where they perform the recurring service. So they might mow, right? They go and they mow the lawn, hang the invoice. Well, he would close in October, and he'd have $300,000 to $400,000 in receivables hanging out there. And he'd get most of it back, but that was his profit that was sitting elsewhere all winter long. So we had an opportunity in 2011 to write the playbook for mosquito control because it didn't exist. So we would pitch the service to homeowners and say, you've got two really great ways to pay. You can pay in full and save X amount of dollars, or spread it out over 3 installments. So we had cards on file. So we had no accounts receivable. We completely, in 2013 in Chantilly, Virginia, doing our very first home show ever, it's one of the things that I pitched was no accounts receivable. So this is a business that you're never collecting money in. So I think that was probably like the biggest con that we were able to write the playbook around and really build a feature and benefit to this business, was no accounts receivable.
Excellent. Yeah, you don't want to have to wait for that money. You want it to be able to come in as soon as possible. Absolutely. Yeah. I know that when you started, you were bringing on franchisees, and you actually have, I believe, from when we previously talked, you said you have 9 out of the 10 originals still with you today. So when you were looking for people to start these franchises, what are some of the qualities that you were looking for? Or rather, what is the common thread between these 9 individuals, really?
Yeah, so here's an interesting thing. It's a great question, man, because I think when we first started, the consulting firm told us that out of the first 10, they felt 9 would be from the green or like industry. So a lawn care company or a landscaper wanting to add mosquito control as an add-on service, pest control company. So that was our mentality. And we were actually doing a lot of marketing to some larger lawn care landscape companies in the markets we were trying to develop initially. So what we quickly learned, especially doing these home shows, was that we were attracting very successful, capable, talented, white collar folks that were looking for their next career path or journey. Like how do they exit corporate America and take control of their destiny? And I don't think any one of them felt that they would be killing mosquitoes for a living, but they all saw this as it's a quality of life service, right? It allows you to stay in your backyard as long as you want, for as late as you want. You don't have to wear yoga pants or long sleeves or cover up in sprays. Like, you just enjoy your property. So as business owners, they saw that as being something really easy for them to get behind. So the 9 out of 10 original franchisees were white collar corporate refugees. The core group of our franchisees are not your typical franchisee. They are very strong-willed, very well-educated, very capable. And that doesn't always make for an easy system to oversee or manage. But I can tell you wholeheartedly that the pushback that they gave in the early years really shaped and formed who we are today. And I consider them true stakeholders. And we are where we are because of them. So I'm glad that we were probably a little more discerning in who we brought on, and we're better for it.
I love that you took suggestions from them or learned from them as well, instead of staying rigid, and really listened to them. So you were able to create a team, really, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that I learned a long time ago to embrace strength, and it was one of probably the toughest things for me to learn in my professional career. But the adage of, if you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. I'm definitely in the right room. I have far smarter people around me than myself, and I want to keep it that way. So I think in the early days, like what we knew more than anything was there's nobody that controlled mosquitoes better than us, but we didn't know franchising in 2013 or 2014 or even 2015. Like we were the best mosquito control company there is, but we were learning the franchise side of it. And I think it would have been a big mistake to not listen and or hear what they were saying to better improve our system moving forward. And I think that's key in any facet of your life, whether it's personal or business, to we always operate under continuous improvement as a core pillar. And I'll say, like, we've never made a selfish decision. We've made bad decisions, but they were never selfish. They were, at the time, we believed to be in the best interest of everybody. And then learning that they might not have been, we would course correct, but we never made a selfish decision as a brand.
That's really incredible. I want to dive into the first 2 years of owning a franchise and why that is so difficult. Because I know we've both spoken about this before, that those first 2 years are pretty brutal. So why is that?
Yeah, it's the seasonality of this business, and I call it the blessing and the curse. And the curse is, so there's exceptions, Amanda. If you're living in the deep South and you're opening up this business, there's a likelihood you're going to have more of a 12-month run or maybe a 10-month run, and there'll be some slower periods. Because even in the South, when it's extremely hot, July, August, September down in Miami, the bugs don't even like being out and the people don't like being out. So they're not coming in contact with each other. So you can slow your business down a little bit. So there's even down in, Southern Florida, there's some component of seasonality. But if you take a location in Michigan, for example, and they open right now and they get open for, say, the first week of July, they're open July, August, and September, and then they close and they go dark until next May. And then they have a 5-month window. So at the end of being an owner for 2 years, they've sprayed for 7 or 8 months. So they haven't even exercised or practiced their craft for 12 months yet after being an owner. So that's the curse. That's the challenge of knowing that, you're going to open for a couple of months, you're going to close. Now there's a lot of things we do with our owners in the off season, and there's things they should be engaged in, but they're really not selling as a rule. They're not out servicing. They're not spraying for mosquitoes in the wintertime. So then they got to wait till that next spring and then start all over again. So we call that year zero now. We've gotten better at setting those expectations for new owners, helping them through that period of time, making sure they're capitalized well enough to survive that period of time. And then the blessing is, as you start to scale this business, you can have a location in Minnesota and you can do 12 months of revenue in 5 or 6 months' time. We have really high retention rates. The service we provide is so good that most of our owners come back every year. They refer at a really high word of mouth. So you start to scale exponentially, and you have the winners off at that point.
Yeah. I know that you have a couple of systems in place to support, especially for those 2 years. Can you go into that a little bit?
We've built out over time a much more robust operations team and onboarding team where you come in, man, as a new owner, and you're with a launch coach for the first 12 months now. So they don't leave your side. So every week they're checking in with you and touching base with you. And then when you graduate from that program and you're heading into year 2 as an owner, you're then assigned a franchise business coach who, in conjunction with the other departments here internally, they're taking feedback from the marketing team and what you guys discussed in your marketing meetings. But every week, your FBC, your business coach, is on with you. And I just had a team meeting earlier today, and my takeaway was it's less about coaching as it is about accountability. Because I feel like that's what new owners need the most, is they need to be held accountable. And it's not in like a punishment way. It's just like, all right, listen, last week we talked and we agreed, these 3 things were going to happen. And Amanda, how did you do on those 3 things? Right. So if you are going into that call and then that happens 3 or 4 weeks in a row, next time you're gonna be like, shit, I got to get my stuff together, because I know she's going to ask me or he's going to ask me if I got those 2 things done, and I haven't. And I'm tired of saying I haven't gotten them done. Right. So I think that level of accountability is really is really the role, I think, of a good franchise business coach, is setting reasonable expectations and then holding people accountable to follow them. And that's going to lead to profitability at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I am a huge fan of accountability, and I don't know if I've ever accomplished anything without it. There's something about having, we're talking about coaches, it's almost like a cheerleader if you look at it in that way, someone cheering you on and wanting you to accomplish those things, as opposed to something that you're dreading, kind of just shifting the mindset a little bit. I do want to talk about coaching. I know that you're a hockey fan, and that you've also coached. So, what are skills that you have taken from the ice to your franchisees?
I think it applies to anything you do, is understanding individual skill sets. And I think the better you are at doing that, and I think some of it can come natural to people, but I also think there is that's a learned skill as well, where you can just get better at observing people and knowing if you're putting them in the best position for success. And I think a really good coach does that, because you're not going to have, your whole team isn't going to be filled with A players. And my biggest thing was, I'll take an A, B, and C team, of players. But if you're a B, I want you to always be a B. And how do we stretch, and can I get you to a B plus? But I can't, I don't want you to be a B and then, you're great one day and you're an A and then you're a C for a week. And so, understanding where you are and where you fit within your environment, I think allows you to put people where they fit, allows you to put people in the best position for success. So I think in building a team, you got to understand those skill sets and know where you can use them, and then know where you can elevate people as well. I love that, and try to do that here all the time internally, but observing, bringing somebody in, sharing those observations with them. And then a week later, you'll see it on their face. You'll see that aha moment of sometimes it's just a level of confidence. They've had the skill all along, and they might even be using it to some extent, but they don't really know the power of it and how it can impact others. So just always trying to do that. I think, we could be quick to lose our, or just attention span in general, and not observe as much as we should be.
Yeah, it seems like you really have to have your finger on the pulse of what's working, what's not, and the strengths of this person. And how do you elevate them and
Mm-hmm.
play into those skills that they already have?
Yeah, exactly. I also think in general, communicating is so important. So keeping lines of communication open, over communicating in some instances, but having these, I always tell everyone here in the home office to make sure that, there's not a hard conversation to have with our owners. Think of how tough it can be if you don't have it. Right. So it's they're in franchising. I strongly believe there's very much of a tough love component that needs to always be in place, because we're only successful if our owners are successful. And if we're not having it, in instances, if we're not having these tough conversations with them, we're not going to solve the real problem or issue that's there. And it's only in their best interest. So I always just make sure I push for the team to be open and honest, transparent, and have those conversations, because they're going to be a lot harder to have if you don't course correct things when they're happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to travel back to 2013 when you started bringing on people into the franchise. What was that time like for you? I know that there was an exponential growth that happened, and very often you kind of had to pump the brakes a little bit. What was that like?
Yeah. So in the beginning, super exciting, right? The energy, and and I gotta give credit to our founder, because he created this business all the way back in 2001, September of 2001. And he really created an incredible company, which then turned into an incredible business opportunity. I certainly had a big role in the business opportunity side of it, and he gave me the go ahead to do that. So he was not a micromanager in any way. He was still working on product refinement and there was things that he was working on. So he did not need to be or want to be involved in the Fran Dev side of things. He let me run with that. And man, when you have your first person say yes, like, wow, is that super rewarding? And because we put a lot into launching this. So in 2013, one, to go and do that show, we had 5 check writers at that show. One, we didn't want to do business with, and 2, we're in competing territories of the 2 we went with. So that was like, I'd never had that happen again. I don't think ever since April of 2013. I mean, it was unbelievable. And that was so exciting to come back from that 2-day show, first ever, and like, wow, I think we have something here. So, so we bring on some owners, and then, the other thing is, I had mentioned that our consulting group said that 9 out of 10 would be sort of blue collar, and it wasn't. It was the complete opposite. So we had to shift on who and how we were marketing. So that was one of the takeaways, was we quickly had to adapt on. We found out that we had a different target audience. So it was a little challenging. They also said that in the first, I think it was 24 months, I don't know. Basically, they said we'd have 10 owners, and we had like 16 in that time frame. So we grew much faster than we thought.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just the founder and myself. So we had to pump the brakes, because we needed to make sure before we brought anybody else on that we started to build out a team here and bring in some key personnel, which we did, and then make sure that we were learning franchising. Because again, we controlled mosquitoes better than anybody. Our original legacy franchisees will tell you that, and they'd also tell you that we probably had no idea what we were doing on the franchise side of things. But man, could we kill mosquitoes. So so we had to really work on that. And if we lead up to when our lives changed forever, heading into the 2020 timeframe with growth, not with the pandemic that occurred, probably 3 times throughout our journey from 2013. So over that 7-year period, we had periods of pause where we, to your point, we pumped the brakes, slowed down, reassessed. We did some internal surveying amongst our franchisees of what are we doing right and what are we doing, either wrong or poorly, or it could be better at, and took that feedback, adjusted. You always have to have franchise development growth. No matter how big you get, you've always got to have, you're going to have resales. You're going to have owners that have grown a really successful business and want to find the exit. So you're going to have new people coming in that way. And so I think it's super important for brands to always be growing at some pace. But I also think that, for us, there were times where we had to slow down and sort of level set.
Absolutely. I think when you are growing so fast, pumping the brakes is a positive, making sure that everything is set in place and you're set for the next level. It's difficult to make that decision, though, I'm sure, because you feel like you're on a roll and here we are, we've arrived and we're going. And then it kind of all falls apart and the cracks start to show. And it sounds like not only did you create a great foundation for your teams, but you really were incorporating their feedback. And this seems to be an overarching theme for you, that you're taking those suggestions and really being mindful of how you can improve, which shows in your success.
Yeah, thank you. And I was not always great at that. And I don't know that I'm great at it now. I just think that I'm realizing that the bigger or the better the team you have, and the more you trust and lean on them, the more you're going to get. When you're starting to have growth like that, and one, there might have been, if there was 4 or 5 of us, that were decision makers in what we did next, there could have been 2 or 3 like, no, things are good, let's keep this thing going. And then a couple people saying, well, no, I don't think it is. And really just, making sure that you're really making decisions based on the best interest of your franchisees, right? Because I think at the end of the day, again, I mentioned earlier, like, we're only successful if they are. And so I think they were, if we slowed down 3 times over that 7-year period, one of them was probably like, I don't think we had a choice. Like we had to slow down because we were quickly getting over our head. And then the other two probably could have gone either way. And I think we made the right decision to pump the brakes.
Yeah, absolutely. My next question is about owners. If you are a business owner, you have your own pest control company, and you are considering to franchise, what do you think they should consider, or what are the mile markers that they should hit before they enter that arena?
So I'm an independent owner of a business and I want to franchise it.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love these conversations. Outside of pest control, even I love just talking to people. When I look at business opportunities and I talk with people about it, I think you have to have a really firm grasp on who your customer is, so their demographic, where they live, so their geographic, so demo geo, and how they act, like what moves them, so psychographic. So those three things you've got to know. Like you don't have a business if you don't know that. Like you could have a great concept that people love, but you don't really know who is my target audience. Because if you're building a franchise model, you have to be able to tell the new owner. So Amanda buys a franchise of mine. I got to be able to tell her who her customer is, where they live, and what motivates them, what moves them, how they act, right? But the psycho graphics of that. So demo geo and psycho is super important in starting a business. And then I really challenge business owners to tell me what their three uniques are. Give me three things that make you unique over the five others that are in town next to you. So what are three uniques? Like I think you really have to, and you can get really creative on that. It's how you spin it to the consumer. So, you know, I could have a plumbing company and there could be five others in town, but they're not talking about something that is really important to the end user. So that's a unique. I'm going to dial that up. I'm going to make that one of my three uniques. I'm going to talk to the this one thing that maybe we do it better, maybe we do it the same as the other five, but they're not hitting on that. And then really knowing who your customer is, and then really being able to position your business with three uniques. I always ask as well, like, what's proprietary? And that doesn't necessarily fall into the three uniques, but do you have something proprietary, and is it guaranteed, or can you guarantee what you're doing in whatever way? If is it a money back guarantee? Is it anything you can do to ease the consumer's mind and give confidence in them engaging with you as a service provider or a vendor? You're going to set yourself up for success. That was a
Yeah.
lot, so I hope that
No,
wasn't.
it's
But
okay.
it's who
No,
your
that's great.
customer is, what makes you unique, and how can you stand behind what you're doing.
These are all important. These are all important things to know. I would love to know Mosquito Shield's three uniques.
Yeah, so I always talk to it in the through a couple of lenses, right? Because we sell business opportunities, and those uniques are we give you a bigger territory, we charge you lower fees than other franchise concepts, and we've got proprietary product. So like those are three uniques. So bigger territories, lower fees. On the consumer side, so Amanda, the homeowner, is getting eaten alive in her backyard. What makes us different? And it's right on the home, like 30,000 foot view. You're getting more visits, better results for less money. So those are like, we come out more often. We've got our own proprietary product. So you're getting better results, and we charge less than the consumer. And we're the only ones with a money back guarantee. So those are our three uniques. We stand behind it with money back, and we absolutely know who our target customer is. And I always tell people, again, on the pitching like Mosquito Shield for a business opportunity, the most important thing about our history is that we have one. We're a mosquito
Absolutely.
control company that got into franchising. We're not a franchise company jumping into this space. Credit to them, because the space is still wide open. Consumers are still learning about this service as something they can benefit from in their own backyard. But we are first and foremost a mosquito control company that got into franchising.
If you're a technician right now and you're considering starting your own business or starting a franchise, what would you say to them?
Oh, I mean, I'm franchise all the way.
I figured.
Well, I mean, there's data, and I don't know it. I suck at this stuff, but there's like how many businesses that are started in a locally owned and independent operated model, and you know, success or failure rate over 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year versus franchising. And franchising is exponentially safer and more successful than trying to do it on your own. I'm pro franchising all the way.
Yeah. What are some of the misconceptions when owning a franchise then?
That you don't have to do anything. It
is work.
it is crazy. It is a business in a box, right? And that's what it's touted as, and that's what franchisors pitch themselves as, is, unparalleled training and support. And, but I can't be there every morning and unlock the door for you, right? You have to be the one to do that. So there's a grind component to any business you start and run. And I do think that there is a false sense of security for people getting into a franchise system that doesn't put the time or effort in and to grow it. So I think that is something that every franchise falls victim of, or to. No matter how well you try to prep people and talk them through it or prepare them for it, there are still people that come into a system and think, oh man, I thought this would be much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that happens very often. What are some success stories of franchisees who have really worked into the grind, where they have stepped up and not only went through and checked all the boxes, but went above and beyond for their business?
I can tell a couple of quick stories. One of them is sort of the opposite. It's two owners come in within a year from each other in an amazing mosquito market. So they're essentially been open, the same time. One is starting to really outpace the other. And every season we're having our spring meetings or our, early season meetings, and we're putting marketing plans in place. And, this one is lagging is saying, well, we're doing everything you tell us to do. And how come, this guy is outperforming us? And about, 4 years in, the lagging one, we're having our meeting, and I say something about signs, yard signs. Like, it is our biggest sales source across the country. People just putting signs out and putting a lot of them out drive business. And the individual says, oh, I haven't been putting them out. And I said, well, what do you mean? Since when? And he said, since the first year, because, Amanda yelled at me because she didn't want it on her front yard, and I never put another one out. Now, the other guy in our system nationally is the biggest sign user, probably to a fault, like gets penalized and fines and citations from towns. But that was such an aha moment, right? Like, our belief is that we tell everybody to put signs out, so we assume they're all putting them out, right? This was a couple of years ago, and it really changed the way we do things. Like we measure signs now, we measure the ordering, we keep track of all it. Anyway, we're like, you got to go put signs out, and you got to put a lot of them out, and you got to do it now. And he literally climbed up, and now they work together. They collaborate more. They're neck and neck every year. And the payoff to me, and the success story of this, which is what your question was, is that location, their lives have changed forever. It's a young couple now with 3 young kids, and they just continue to grow year over year. They've built an amazing business. If they wanted to exit, they could exit and be set for life. They're all really great people, but to see their success now, where back at that conversation a few years back, they were thinking about, like, we might want to get out.
Oh,
like,
wow.
we're not scaling the way we want to. And it wasn't just that one thing, but it was like, oh, well, we think we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, but are we doing it as well as we could? I think that was the aha moment of, there's all these great best practices that are out there. Are we really leveraging them? And are we really, really doing that? And that's what I ask owners on a regular basis is, just, ask yourself and be honest with yourself. Those are the two things you got to do, right? You got to be continually asking yourself, but you got to be honest with the answer. So we can do a lot better at the home office here. I know that. But at the same time, there has to be self-reflection on their end as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Accountability. Once again, am I doing everything that I can be
Right.
doing to ensure the success? And I love that it's, I don't want to say as simple as putting out these signs, but saying, okay, maybe I had this one negative experience from Amanda. She came out onto the lawn and she gave me the business. But Amanda isn't everywhere. And I should just keep pushing through because I can grow from that.
100%. I think that's a great point, which is you can't get caught up in the ones and twos of things.
Mm.
Our franchisees around the country have the opportunity to have thousands of customers. So if they have 200 and they're reacting to the one or two people, right? Like we're trying to get them past that because we need you to get to 2,000. And I've had owners when they tell me a customer's name, I will tell them that they don't have enough.
Mm.
Like if you're telling me that you're having a problem getting Amanda's property under control, you should not know. And this is probably going to sound awful, but you don't want to know Amanda's name, right? Like your technician will, and your technician will take unbelievable care of Amanda, but you want 2,000 Amandas. Like you don't have enough customers. If you're calling me and telling me that so-and-so, like you shouldn't know their name at this point. You need more customers.
Yeah, that's a good mile marker and something to keep aware of.
I mean, and the other
Absolutely.
thing is, like, I joke because when you're starting a business from scratch, like you're always going to remember Mr. So-and-so and the conversation you had when you were the one spraying his yard. And like, it's like taping the dollar bill up on your business, right? The first dollar that came over the counter. But in general, this is a huge business opportunity that is very scalable, and you want to have thousands of customers.
Absolutely. Michael, this has been such an excellent conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I know I've learned a lot. I want to take it all the way back to your very first franchise. And I want to say this right. I might not, but Boomshankas. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, Boomshankas. I don't
I
know
did
if
it.
so this is 1990. This goes back to launched it in 1991, and what is it? We're in 2024. I don't know if you can see it, but I still have a picture of it on my desk. Our
Oh,
very first location, mostly takeout, but just who doesn't love ice cream, right?
exactly. Exactly. I feel like that's a pretty solid business venture.
Yeah,
You don't have to do too much research on
makes
that one.
everybody happy. Hey,
Yeah.
being an owner of an ice cream business, when we're traveling, we're always getting ice cream. And I said this recently, and someone looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, "There's no such thing as bad ice cream." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, on a hot summer day, if there's nothing, and somebody hands you a hoodsie cup, like you're gonna eat it, and it's terrible. It's barely not ice milk. It's like just enough to be ice cream, but anyway, yeah, everybody loves ice cream. I did it with a business partner that I had known through the music business long, long, long time ago. In fact, he was at the Jason Isbell show the other night, which was really
Oh,
awesome.
cool.
Yeah,
I
all
love
these
that.
years later. Yeah, so we created a really amazing culture or community of a place that all walks of life were welcomed. And it was in a small town, the first place coastal tourist community here in Massachusetts that, population swelled in the summertime, probably, 5 or 6x number of people in town during the summertime. And but it was a small town that had, issues like all small towns, and it was very fragmented on the parts of the town. But we welcomed everybody, and by doing that and respecting everyone, it gave everyone a feeling that they had a place to be. And we were able to replicate that across several locations, which was really cool. And still kick myself to this day that we didn't continue it, but life happens. And after a 5-year run, we exited it. But my kids, who have never saw it or knew it or anything, wear the t-shirts and the baseball hats, and always ask, like, can we open it up again? So yeah,
Oh.
thank you for bringing that up, because that was a really wonderful time of my life, and really proud of that community we built.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a theme that I'm sensing with you through all your business ventures is the idea of community, and really just creating a space where people feel welcome, that they can succeed, and setting them up for that success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love that.
100%. I think I got to probably give that to influence from my dad, who um, and even my older siblings, all of their friends, all of my friends wanted to hang out at my house. And it was
Yeah.
because of my dad. He had retired early, so he was around. He was probably in his, early 50s when I was in, high school and early years of college. And everyone just loved being around him. He was that kind of guy that created this space for people to just want to hang out. And so I think that family was key and super important. And, I think to this day, looking at some of the things that some of the traditions I try to pass on to my kids and make them stick with it, right? Because that's the thing. It's like, you're going to be glad we did this, and we do it every single year at the same time. And so, yeah, I think community, family, I think those are definitely parts of my DNA.
Amazing. I love that. And it has served you well. Thank you so much, Michael Moorhouse, for coming onto the podcast. What a wonderful conversation. We could go on forever. I know that to be true. But thank you. Truly, truly, truly. There's so much more I would love to dive into. Thank you again for coming on and having such a wonderful conversation with us
Yeah, this
today.
was so much fun.